Around the nation, TYT Nation, Jeff Waldorf here with you. It's Friday, and what a Friday we have. So today's going to be a little different than most days. I had a little bit of a tech snafu earlier today, so I lost like half the show that I had worked on, but that's all right. We still got some stuff. We're going to talk about some very important issues. Also, we're going to make fun of Donald Trump as usual. Usual. All right. Anyway, I don't know why I did that. It's a mood. It's a mood today. All right. So now, first we're going to have a story where Donald Trump, and this is back in 2017. So, but we've got more details of a fun little meeting in which some of the staff were trying to educate Donald Trump. You can imagine how that went. And actually, I probably have already reported, but we have new details, which are, of course, always fun. Then we've got censorship in schools. So, I'm sorry, not in schools, but in libraries. So we've got Republicans going after the public libraries and trying to ban books. Horrible. We're going to talk about that. And then finally, we have a disastrous story of a young woman who died because she couldn't get medical care. So again, disastrous story, but that's what we're going to talk about. And there's a lot of different factors to that. And then I figured for the rest of the time, I'll answer a couple of Q bounties. Maybe if you guys have some super chats, you want to ask me like pretty much anything, just like ask me anything. But we're going to do super chat only. So if you want to ask me a question, I will answer some of those, and we'll kind of ride out and then end where we end, and head into the weekend. So interesting stuff. Hopefully that will make a pretty good show. All right, guys. So please, like and share the stream if you haven't already. Very important that you do so. And subscribe to the channel as well. All right, so let's get into it, huh? And I see members in here, which is really nice to see. All right. Fun story of the day. So Donald Trump is well known for not being intellectually curious, like at all. He's also not known for being a very stable genius, but is known as a man who is woefully unprepared and lacking in knowledge about the things that he claims to know very, very well. I know the best. I'm the best at nuclear. All right. Anyway, now one such example happened during a briefing intended to teach him some of the basic fundamentals of U.S. foreign policy. So now foreign policy is very complicated. Turns out nobody knew it was that complicated. Now, it turns out it is complicated, especially when you're talking about foreign alliances and the difference. And this is something else that Donald Trump didn't understand, the difference between the Quds Force and the Kurds. And I go back to this because when he was asked about the Quds Force, he's like, oh, I feel very strongly for the Kurds. It's terrible what's happening to the Kurds. By the way, the Kurds is the group that Donald Trump abandoned to the Turkish military in Syria, instead sending our troops to guard oil fields, which, by the way, our military members were not happy about this, are not happy about this. And it's because in the military, of course, you serve alongside of people, and our soldiers served alongside the Kurdish Peshmerga against ISIS. Well, you tend to develop a bond. And so our troops were not happy about abandoning the Kurds to the Turks, who ended up getting slaughtered. And so Donald Trump had no idea, the Kurds, right? No, the Quds Force. That's part of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. It's the Iranians. Oh, Jesus Christ, he's an idiot. All right, but anyway, that's just one example of Donald Trump's supposed knowledge, right, of foreign policy. So now his advisors, and this happened about 6 months into his presidency, right? Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis, according to Washington Post, by the way, Director of the National Economic Security Council, Economic Council Gary Cohn, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, all who are not there anymore, by the way, were both frustrated and alarmed by the gaps in Trump's knowledge of world affairs. So they decided, like good advisors, and like Donald Trump has said, I'm going to surround myself with the best people, the greatest people. They'll tell me what's going on. Well, okay, well, here's what they're trying to do. So what happened? Well, according to the July 20th, 2017 meeting that is detailed in the book Very Stable Genius by the Post's Carol Leonnig and Philip Rucker, it did not go well. Now, that meeting, like I said, has been discussed before, but this book provides new details thanks to interviews with some of the people that were in the room. Per the book, Trump was quickly aggravated by the presentation, which featured charts and graphics punctuated with dollar signs. And during this presentation, Donald Trump had repeatedly interrupted to alleviate his apparent boredom, said others who took part in the meeting. So now notice how they worked so hard to try to cater to the baby by using charts and graphs and dollar signs. Because, hey, Donald Trump, he loves dollar signs because he loves money. So let's just pepper them throughout our presentation to make sure the baby pays attention. Well, perhaps you should have made them golden dollar signs or had put his name through it more. And that might have made him pay attention. It's ridiculous, man. But not only was he very unimpressed and super bored, right? But he ended up getting pretty angry about some of the topics. Now, one outburst, which happened as officials were attempting to explain some of our foreign alliances, which are very, very important when discussing foreign policy, and actually trying to get any sort of objective, like, for example, fighting ISIS, done. You're going to need friends, right? Which Donald Trump has learned with his recent flare-up with Iran, in which no foreign leader was at all interested in getting in the middle of that pile, right? So they didn't want to step in that. Didn't even want to get near it with a 10-foot pole and someone else pushing. Okay, anyway. Now, this outburst, as I said, came when it came to like NATO, for example. He said, quote, "We are owed money you haven't been collecting. You would totally go bankrupt if you had run your own business." Those are Trump quotes, right? Which should be obvious by the voice. But anyway, now, to be fair, Donald Trump would know a good 2, 3, 6 things about bankruptcy. So, all right. Now, he also took issue, and this is, related to Iran, the Iran deal, which he later on scrapped. At that point, we were still under the Iran deal, and the Iranians, of course, were adhering to the tenets inside the deal. Now, during the meeting, Trump had exploded with anger when Tillerson tried to explain why the Iran deal was actually a good thing. This is Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, former CEO of ExxonMobil, one of the most evil corporations in world history, right? Knew about climate change, didn't do anything. In fact, they did the opposite. They came up and they funded think tanks and all these groups to say that, oh no, climate change not happening, in order to sow doubt. Evil corporation, headed up by evil people. And Rex Tillerson's like, you know what? This turns out that Iran deal is actually really good. Maybe you shouldn't scrap it. Maybe you should actually, I don't know, do the not stupid thing, especially since Iran is following the deal. However, baby wouldn't have it. Trump reportedly said, quote, "I don't want to hear it. They're cheating. They're building." By the way, there's no evidence to back any of that up. We're getting out of it. I keep telling you. I keep giving you time, and you keep delaying me. I want out. No, well, the only reason that Donald Trump wanted out of that nuclear deal is because Obama is the one who actually got it done. And we learned, of course, later on that one of the chief reasons, as I said before, Obama, and he thinks that he could negotiate a better deal with than Barack Obama. Ridiculous, right? Guy can't negotiate himself out of a paper bag. All right. Anyway, now not only that, look, Donald Trump also, and a lot of people I don't think make this connection. Donald Trump watches a lot of Fox News. He's always watched a lot of Fox News, right? His brain is basically like he's got brain worms from it, right? It's a mush of all this Fox News propaganda. Well, Fox News, of course, they say, well, Obama, right? Well, I don't like the Iran deal because Obama. And that's what they kept reporting. Hannity, over and over again, oh, Iran deal bad, Iran deal bad. We're giving them billions of dollars of our money. Not at all true. Not at all true. That's actually their money that we froze. And then when they started adhering to the nuclear deal, we actually gave them back their money. Won't get that from Fox News. So he watches all this ridiculous propaganda. He's like, oh, Obama. Oh. Most officials, right, Republican officials, I think they know that what they're saying is garbage, right? And so, but they go on TV and they gin up that outrage because it works in the base. Oh, be afraid, be afraid. Iran, bad. Iran, Muslim, bad. Ah, you must be afraid. Vote for Republicans. Whereas, like, Republicans, yeah, I think they maybe think that they could have, negotiated a stronger deal. But I think at the end of the day, I think most of them personally were like, yeah, we're fine with this. We're fine with the Iran deal because it actually does do the job. But I can still go on Fox News and rail against it to scare the crap out of my base so that they continue to vote for me. That's what I think happened. But anyway, Donald Trump's too stupid to realize that that's not true, that the Iran deal is actually good, and that all this is propaganda to scare people who have brain worms that are as stupid as he is. And so he thinks, oh, no, it is a bad deal. It's a terrible deal. I could do a much better job. When in reality, that is literally the best deal that you can get. And it's not like, for example, a corporate contract where you can go and renegotiate for better rates. This was a very important deal that has to deal with not only an entire sector of their economy, but their entire economy, right? Not just where they get their energy from, because they had a nuclear energy program that they ended up giving up, as well as some autonomy around some of their nuclear sites, letting in inspectors and things like that, which was called for in the deal. But these sanctions that, again, crippled their economy. And that's, of course, why you see them starting up their nuclear program again, because, look, even though there's a lot of nations that still were committed to the deal, Donald Trump said, no, we're going to punish any nation that helps Iran, that sells anything to Iran or buys anything from Iran, because, we're just going to be dicks like that. Okay. Plain and simple, right? And so that basically sabotaged any reason for Iran to even try to not develop a nuclear program. And now they're saying, screw it. We're going to do whatever we want now because, well, for one, you reneged on the deal first. So screw you. We're not going to follow it anymore because our economy is basically in shambles at this point. So anyway, now there's Iran. Trump, not done. He goes to Afghanistan, right? Not literally, but he talks about Afghanistan. He calls it, quote, a loser war. Well, look, to be fair, there is a winner in that war, defense contractors. Trump had apparently told everybody in the room, quote, you're all losers. You don't know how to win anymore. Well, now, wait a minute. How do you win a war that by design is unwinnable? War on terror. What is that? What is that? You got to be kidding me, right? No, that war is not a conventional war, okay? And there's no clear, again, war on terror. There's no clear end goal. How do you get rid of terror? Terror is a feeling, right? You can't get rid of all the terrorists, right? Especially when you have a situation where every drone strike or wayward bomb that goes and kills someone's family creates an extra terrorist or three. So that, by design, is a way to have endless, unwinnable wars, which is wonderful for the defense contractor industry. So there's that, right? Basically, it's nothing more than a sinkhole where money and lives get sucked into perpetuity. Okay. Now, there's also a report out, by the way, in Afghanistan talking about, not winning the war, right? This report said that we would have to occupy Afghanistan for the next 100 years or so to meet this vague goal of we beat terrorism in Afghanistan. 100 years, next century. Oh, hell no. Hell no. We also had the Pentagon Afghanistan papers, which are about as important as Pentagon papers, that also showed that the war, basically, we had been lied to about it. Okay. So the best thing that Trump could do is withdraw all of our troops from Afghanistan. Not like he did in Syria, which, by the way, he didn't actually remove our troops from Syria. He just shifted them around to protect the oil fields, right? But actually, have a plan. This is when we're going to withdraw our troops. This is how we're going to do it. It's going to be an orderly withdrawal, and we're going to, train some security forces as we're pulling out. Maybe have some leave behind some private contractors, something like that. Some sort of plan, right, of how we're going to do it. But with Trump, you don't have a plan. Trump's too dumb to withdraw from anything in an effective way. I just resisted making a Barron joke. Okay, anyway, as right-wingers get outraged. Now, the president also asked, by the way, why the U.S. didn't get oil in exchange for stationing troops in the Persian Gulf. He said, quote, "We spent $7 trillion. They're ripping us off. Where's the effing oil?" The American people are saying, we can't spend $1 trillion a year on this. We just can't. It's going to bankrupt us. Again, something that he knows very well, bankruptcy. But look, technically, the United States can't go bankrupt. We print our own currency, and we are the world's reserve currency. So, I mean, that's something that nobody talks about. We technically can't go bankrupt. We can increase inflation, absolutely, and make our money near worthless by printing too much of it, but we're not even near close to that, right? In reality, of course, what we have in so-called national debt is really debt to ourselves. Anyway, and of course, you could get into MMT as well, modern monetary theory. But I'm not going to go into that right now. Anyway, he's right that we do spend a lot of money for no reason, that the American people are tired of wars in the Middle East. He's absolutely correct about that. But it is kind of funny that not more than 2 years later, he damn near starts a war with Iran, another war in the Middle East. Wonderful, right? By that point, according to the book, Trump had worked himself into a lather, insulting individual military leaders and breathlessly ranting. He said, quote, "I wouldn't go to war with you people. You're a bunch of dopes and babies." Very stable genius, that guy. Look, everything Trump says is projection, right? Obviously, nobody would want to go to war with Trump leading. Even Republicans voted to restrict Donald Trump's war powers with Iran. Matt Gaetz teamed up with Bernie Sanders to stop Donald Trump from going to war with Iran. So, I mean, come on, even Republicans, they know. But Trump, look, going back to projection, right? He calls everybody dopes and babies and dumb and or dummies, right? That's because his daddy called him that all the time. Probably around the times that he's had to bail him out from bankruptcy. So now the reaction to this is also chronicled in the book, and I like this. People in the room had reportedly felt, quote, sick to their stomach by the president's tirade, and one woman was seen crying. And only Rex Tillerson spoke up to defend the military, and then, afterwards, famously wrote off Trump, speaking to others as the room had emptied. And this is where he had said, quote, "He's an effing moron." Well, there you go. And the result following, of course, is that nobody since then has tried to instruct him on basically anything because it's useless. He already thinks he knows everything, and he will accept nothing else. The man revels in his ignorance, even if he doesn't understand that it is ignorance. And so any information that doesn't come from his already pre-approved sources that match his pre-approved worldview, for example, Fox News, gets rejected. Anything that doesn't feed his ego gets rejected. And that's unfortunately who Donald Trump really is. Okay. Yeah, total loser. That's right. Moving on here. A Republican-sponsored bill in the Missouri State House would actually create review boards to remove books deemed inappropriate. So now this bill is the Parental Oversight of Public Libraries Act, and it's proposed by Representative Ben Baker. So now on its face, it kind of sounds pretty innocuous, right? Oh, it's a board of concerned parents. They just want to make sure that children don't read bad things, right? However, the Missouri Library Association is very worried about this. They're sounding the alarm because they say that this could jail librarians for having books that are deemed inappropriate, and that, of course, what the definition of inappropriate is pretty vague. So now, this would again allow for locally elected parental library review boards to unilaterally remove books that they decide are sexually explicit or otherwise inappropriate for young readers. Now, libraries, according to the bill, that allow children to borrow books that have been banned or whose access has been restricted would risk losing state funding, and librarians could be ordered to pay fines up to $500 or sentenced to jail time for up to a year. And again, as I mentioned before, the board would decide what was actually inappropriate. So you could have books that, for example, have LGBT plus characters in them or themes. Now, Baker was talking to a local radio news station, KOAM, and said that the bill came out of his desire to ensure libraries have a, quote, safe environment and that children are not going to be exposed to something that is objectionable material. So wait, no, this guy is creating a literal safe space in a public library. Weren't you against safe spaces? Don't Republicans hate safe spaces? Oh, not against books, apparently. Now, this supposed safe space for kids is actually going to be against anything that he doesn't like. Now, what could he possibly not like, or what could these parents not like? Well, maybe any books on atheism, anything that involves magic, for example, Harry Potter, or anything written by Karl Marx, maybe Eugene Debs, or books where there's a same-sex kiss or any sort of sexual theme, right? It's pretty broad. And so this is really disastrous. And by the way, this is at a public library, not a children's library, public libraries, where adults are also allowed to go and check out books. You're going to use children to ban books, adult books, and I'm not saying like adult books, but books with more adult themes, they're going to get banned, and you're using the children to do it. That is extreme because nobody can read those books once they're banned. And even an adult who tries to get this, if it's banned, could get in trouble. Really? Okay, anyway. Now, this is, of course, censorship, and it's one step removed from book burning. Now, MLA President Cynthia Dudenhofer, which I love that name, by the way, she was not buying this explanation. She said, quote, public libraries already have procedures in place to assist patrons in protecting their own children while not infringing upon the rights of other patrons or restricting materials. So this is what we call personal responsibility, right? And so you're leaving it up to the individual to protect the children instead of big government. Then why is a Republican trying to use big government to supposedly protect children from inappropriate materials? Well, that's not their job, right? You're supposed to be a Republican? Now, Missouri Library Association, she continues, will always oppose legislation that infringes on these rights. Now, there are other groups that spoke out against the proposal. Freedom of Expression advocacy group PEN America called HB 2044 a shockingly transparent attempt to legalize book banning. Quote, books wrestling with sexual themes, books uplifting LGBTQIA plus characters, books addressing issues such as sexual assault. All of these books are potentially on the chopping block if this bill is passed, said James Tager, the group's deputy director of free expression, research, and policy. Every reader and writer in the country should be horrified, absolutely horrified at this bill. Now, others on social media also weighed in. Now, this is a unnamed Twitter user, because I don't have the name. A new bill being proposed in Missouri, absolutely detestable. Censoring information / what's available to readers is a direct violation to what our country stands for, could jail librarians. Literary Hub says, hard to imagine a more ominous name for a bill than the Parental Oversight of Public Libraries Act. Right. So this is super Orwellian, by the way. Now, I don't believe in censorship. I believe censorship is the wrong way to go. I despise censorship. And look, the reason I don't like censorship is because I think all information should be accessible, and bad ideas should be combated with good ideas. And so I don't think that we should have censorship. I think that we should have a discussion, right? And I think that we should have the good ideas that are presented to combat, like I said before, the bad ones. So if you care about access to information, then you should be aware of this bill, because if it becomes law in Missouri, this could be a model for social conservatives to limit access to information based solely even on their morality. Whatever these parental boards tend to believe is objectionable, they could get rid of. And so that is a serious problem if you care about censorship. All right. So we got one more prepared story. Guys, if you have, guys or gals, if you have any super chats or any questions that you want to ask, get those in soon. I'll do a couple of, otherwise I'll do some Q bounties, and then we'll call it a day. All right. Anyway, this is a disastrous story, by the way. Now, Tashana Ward was a 25-year-old daycare teacher who recently passed away while trying to find a doctor to help her. Now, this is according to a disastrous report in USA Today. Ward was having severe chest pains and was having trouble breathing. So, of course, like most people, she went to the emergency room to try to seek treatment. Now, she was at the Froedtert Hospital in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And so, look, she had, like I said, chest pains and trouble breathing. Those are, generally related to heart problems. So now it was reported that hospital staff had checked her heartbeat with an EKG, electrocardiogram, which, according to them, appeared normal. After that, she was taken to the waiting room. She was in a triage area, and she was asked to stay in the waiting room until she could be admitted to be seen by a doctor. This is according to the family. Now, usually chest pains is something that you would generally get to see a doctor pretty soon for, right? They would immediately get right in, especially paired with shortness of breath. So let me give you an example. Now, it's kind of an embarrassing example for you guys, for me. But look, I've got acid reflux, right? And so acid reflux, when it's really bad, it's bad. And so you get this burning in your chest area, like right here. And then it gets hard to breathe because when it gets into your throat, it kind of tries to close off your throat a little bit from all the acid, right? And so that could be mistaken for heart symptoms, heart problems. So when I had before I had been diagnosed with acid reflux, and this is what actually led me going to the doctor for it, to get diagnosed, I went to the hospital, right? I went to the emergency room. So now what happened is they got me right in. I was like, hey, I got some chest problems. I don't know what's going on. It could be a heart issue. I don't know. I'm concerned. So, I need some help. Immediately got me to see a doctor. So now what was different? Ward, on the other hand, like I said, waited for about 2 hours in the emergency room. 2 hours. I think that's pretty unacceptable, right? And this, by the way, with our amazing American healthcare system. So, again, I asked, what was the difference? Well, Tashana Ward was black, and I'm, of course, pasty white guy. So she sits there for, like I said, hours, feeling like she's going to die. During her wait, she decides to post on Facebook. She said, I really hope I'm not in this emergency room all night. This is at 5:45 p.m. 7:35, she posted that she'd been told that this is after a 2-hour wait, that she might have to wait 2 to 6 hours to see a doctor. Quote, I don't know what they can do about the emergency system at Froder, but they damn sure need to do something. All right. I've been here since 4:30 something for shortness of breath and chest pains for them to say it's a 2 to 6 hour wait to see a doctor. And so after that, she decides, I can't wait here any longer. Maybe they'll actually help me if I go to another hospital. So she gets up, she leaves, but Ward never made it to another hospital. Sometime later, she collapsed and died. And so what happened? What did she actually die from? Well, the Milwaukee County Medical Examiner's Office has not determined a cause of death. Now, the report also doesn't say whether Ward was admitted or seen by a doctor at Froder before she left. Ward's family said she was kept in the waiting room and was not under any monitoring when she decided to leave. So no doctor to tell her, whoa, wait, you should not leave. This is serious. We will get you in. We will get you in soon. No, they didn't pay attention to her at all after the EKG and the initial assessment, right? Oh, no, you can wait. You can wait 2 to 6 hours. You're fine. You're fine, right? But here's the thing. She should have been admitted because as a chest x-ray revealed later on, Ward suffered from something called cardiomegaly. Now, what is that? That's an enlarged heart. So now she had that condition for quite some time. She has a medical history. Back in March, her baby had passed away, unfortunately, after the umbilical cord wrapped around the baby's neck. Ward was told that she had developed an enlarged heart during her pregnancy, according to a medical examiner's report. Cardiomegaly can be temporary or it can last a lifetime. And in either case can put people at greater risk for blood clots, cardiac arrest, and other heart issues. Now, if they had actually admitted her and monitored her and maybe had done that x-ray, they could have found out what was going on. that it could be a condition that was related to her cardiomegaly. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. And so her family had weighed in. This is Ward's cousin, Andrea Ward. She told USA Today, quote, "How can you triage someone with shortness of breath and chest pain and just stick them in the lobby? Froedtert needs to change their policy." Now, a spokesperson for the hospital provided a statement saying, quote, "The family is in our thoughts and has our deepest sympathy. We cannot comment further at this time." Well, of course. I wonder why. I wouldn't want to comment too. This is disastrous. Now, look, this is one example of how our healthcare system fails African American women. It fails a lot of people, right? And I know this, but of everyone that it fails Black women the most. And so there are stories and there are documented studies where Black women having to deal with our healthcare system find that they are discriminated against. They're often dismissed when they explain their symptoms, their pain. And look, there's hundreds of stories. There's probably tens of thousands of unreported stories of that happening to African American women. So I think this is definitely one of those cases, right? Why else would you leave somebody complaining of chest pain and shortness of breath in the lobby for 2 to 6 hours? Unless you don't believe them. So there is a definite racial component here. There's also a socioeconomic component as well. And I think the assumption is, well, she's Black, she must be poor, right? However, there are middle class African American women who also get treated the same way, who also, get dismissed and ignored when they express their pain, right? And go for treatment for it. In fact, Serena Williams, very famous tennis player, she recalled her own horror story with her doctor and the fact that she was not believed. And so it can happen to anyone of any socioeconomic status, but more so if you're African American and a female. And so out of all the factors here, and the misogynistic component as well, Black women have it the worst out of everyone. And so at the very least, there's some very big implicit bias here, right? Now, I'm not saying these doctors are wearing Klan hoods, right? But there's a big racial disparity. And let me give you another example of that. Now, a lot of you might be familiar with the story of Amy Vilela. Now, she's a good friend of the show and a good friend and a wonderful person. She was also a former Justice Democrat that ran for office in Nevada. Now, her story and the reason that she got into politics is that her daughter had named Shaylin had went to the hospital for an issue with her leg. Now, the doctors, they did not take a look. They did not do what they were supposed to do. Instead, they handed her some pain medication, sent her home. She died. If they had actually taken the time to examine her, they would have found out what was actually wrong with her and had been able to save her life. Instead, what they did is that they had, looked at her. She's mixed race and noticed that she didn't have insurance that was current, as she was, I think, in the middle of transferring to a new insurance. They did something basically called a wallet biopsy, right? They assumed that she couldn't pay. Well, if you're not going to pay, then we're really not going to treat. I mean, we're supposed to give you something because we can't legally turn you away. But here's what we're going to do. We're just going to do the very most cursory examination. Okay, everything looks fine. Oh, here's some pain medication. You'll be all right. Go somewhere else. We didn't turn you away because we did kind of look at you a little bit and gave you something. But go. We're not going to make any money from you. That's what's going on. That's what happened there. Both race and assumed socioeconomic status were involved in that. And I have little doubt that I think that there was that kind of situation at play here. And so there's a lot of work to be done in our healthcare system. It's a disaster. But even if we get that the pay component fixed through a Medicare for all system, there's also other things that need to be fixed for women of color, especially, and doctors dismissing their pain and not actually, like believing them when they say, "Hey, this is what's wrong with me. I know my body, and I trust you to try to figure out how best to serve me and to alleviate this pain." And so there's a lot of work to be done. Implicit bias training, of course, would be one thing. Believe women when they tell you they're in pain. I know it's like a weird thing to have to say, but that's exactly the point. And also, obviously, a big part of this is Medicare for all. Medicare for all. So you eliminate that assumption that people are not going to be able to pay because everyone will be covered. Again, that won't solve every single problem in the medical industry, but it'll solve a hell of a lot of ones, and maybe make situations like Shane Lynn's and this woman's a little bit less. Okay. All right. So I'm going to take a break. I'm going to come back. I'll answer some super chats and Q bounties, and then we're going to wrap the show up. All right, guys. Please like and share, and we'll be back in a couple minutes.
Mike Pounds.
Welcome back to the show. On the Nation right here, TWT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. So I want to thank a few patrons here. Mediocre Star Wars modeler. Hey, you're honest, right? That's good. I like that. And then also want to thank Shade. Definitely not throwing shade. All right. So patreon.com/TWT Nation. That's to support independent progressive media. Then let's head over to channel members, where I want to thank Damos Aries and Jim Bexley. So thank you. That's channel membership. You can hit the join button below. That's how you can support independent progressive media. All right, super chats. So let's go to that. Got a couple of them anyway. Here's a little bit of a request from Mark Davis.
Mike Pounds.
There you go. Sarge Tech, to get a little bit more serious, Jeff, I'm starting to think that the impeachment of Donald J. Trump will end in disaster. He will get away with it. I just hope he is not reelected. Look, Sarge, I'm already there. I know he's going to get away with it. There's no way in hell that the Republican Party is going to vote to remove a sitting Republican president. Absolutely no way whatsoever. As far as reelection goes, look, there is some good news. Bernie Sanders beats Trump in Florida. Now, there's a new poll out. So that is very interesting. If Donald Trump gets beaten in Florida, it's not as if Florida isn't an important state. I mean, it's a swing state or anything like that, right? So I don't know. And look, also, brand new national poll out. Bernie Sanders is now 2 points ahead of Biden nationally. Elizabeth Warren has fallen by 12 points. 12 points. And then Pete Buttigieg as well, down to 6%. But here comes Michael Bloomberg. Oh, God. Here we go. I think it's Michael Bloomberg. Disastrous. All right. Anyway, it appears that Elizabeth Warren, her allegations of sexism against Bernie Sanders did not stick very well. LOL, happy Friday to you as well. So that's some interesting poll numbers. And there's more stuff that I wanted to get into with that poll that I unfortunately lost in my show notes. But anyway, we'll come back with that later on because that is amazing news. All right. So with that, let's answer a couple of Q bounties. Anonymous asks, and these are all anonymous, should the next president prosecute President Trump for war crimes? That's a good question. I think that they should definitely attempt to go after Donald Trump for war crimes, because when you say that you're going to bomb terrorists' families, right? The families that didn't actually do anything, right? Yes, that is a war crime. When you try to take the oil from other countries during a time of war, that is a war crime. Expanding the drone program, as I mentioned before, targeting and killing the number 2 guy in Iran. This isn't just going after random terrorist Mohammed, right? No, this is going after somebody who is part of a government, a foreign government. That's an assassination, definitely a war crime. Or even if it's not considered a war crime, it's still, I think, a crime. Because you can't just go around and assassinate world leaders or even people higher up in other governments. Can't do that. So I think they should absolutely go after Donald Trump for war crimes. I think, of course, it should be a fair trial. You should present all the evidence against Donald Trump and then go from there and hope justice prevails. So thank you, Anonymous. And let's go to another one here. And a couple of these are kind of old, but that's my fault. Anonymous asks, do you think the sleeping guards were the only ones responsible for Jeffrey Epstein's death? Look, let's be honest. There's no way for anybody to know. Are there a lot of people that are breathing a little bit easier now that Jeffrey Epstein is not breathing? Definitely. Do I know who they are? No, I do not. I mean, you could say, hey, Bill Clinton palled around with Jeffrey Epstein. So did Donald Trump. And I'm sure they might be, I guess, a little worried about what he possibly might have known. I don't know about them, right? We know that Donald Trump has had a history of rape and sexual assault. And we also know that Donald Trump had gone into dressing rooms at the Miss Universe pageant and had seen, look, maybe not, I don't know if he directly saw them, but in that same room where the contestants were changing, it's a changing room, there were underage girls there. And so Trump comes in and says, it's nothing I've never seen before. No, don't do that. And he'd brag about it. But look, I don't know what Trump knew. Only Trump knows what Trump knew, and well, he's not going to be very forthright about it. But there's this interesting quote, and I can't remember it verbatim, but I think it's something about, we know that Jeffrey liked them young, a little on the young side. Yeah, no kidding. But look, again, I don't know how much he knows, but I do know that there are a lot of powerful people out there who, again, are pretty happy that Jeffrey Epstein is out of the picture. I don't know if it was an orchestrated hit. There's so much. I mean, there's so much good conspiracy fodder in this. Like, the cameras that were suddenly not working, and the two guards that were falling asleep, and the mysterious circumstances. Me personally, I do think it was a hit, but I don't have any evidence, and we're not going to have any evidence of it. And that's probably the worst thing, is we're never going to. It's like we're always going to suspect that it was, that somebody had Epstein killed, but we're never really going to know. And so, do I think the sleeping guards were the only ones responsible? No, I don't. If it has to be, I think, with no evidence and complete and utter speculation, that there had to have been other people involved or someone else involved. And I could not tell you who it is because I have no idea. So hopefully that's a good answer enough for you on this one. All right. Then let's see. I did listen to that, Bonnie. That's fun. It's a little bit of
And they say the noise causes cancer. And they say
Noise
the
causes cancer. Fun times. Hilarious. So thank you for sending that, Bonnie. That's pretty awesome. All right. That's all the ones, the Q bounties that I have time for. There was one more. There was a very large clip, but I have some super chats to read here. Orc G5000 says, thanks for what you do. Greetings from Costa Rica. Greetings. I hear it's very, very nice this time of year, or old times of the year in Costa Rica. So hello, and thank you so much. Tony Izzo says, thanks for the news. Well, thank you for the super chat, and thank you for staying around. You're all pretty amazing. So thank you very much for your donations, and just thank you for watching. Like, even just you watching the show and commenting and having conversations, I think that's awesome. I think that's excellent, and I love it. All right. So I lied. I'm going to read a couple of your comments and do some commentary on it as well. Weary Pirate says he was murdered. Yeah, I'm not disputing that one. But again, I just don't know the facts. Let's see. A couple of things here. Google Epstein's Little Black Book, which was stolen and published with their phone numbers redacted. Trump is listed on page 80. His wife is on page 59. His brother and sister-in-law are on page 59 and 60. His daughter's on page 59. It's a lot of Trumps with concrete connections to Epstein. Epstein, I think, had a lot of concrete connections with a lot of powerful people, not just in, Washington, but New York, Hollywood, right? So there's a lot of people, again, a lot of powerful people that palled around with this guy, knowing exactly who he is, Um, uh, Valerie says underage just makes it worse, but isn't the sole factor of being wrong. Absolutely, I wasn't suggesting any otherwise. I'm just saying that that's barging into that dressing room where women are changing. That's obviously a terrible thing. The fact that it's underage makes it even worse. So I definitely agree with you on that. Um, let's see. Terry Hampton, member comment says, I think England has the best healthcare system. Doctors, our government employees, and everybody covered been that way for 70 years. Uh, Canada also has a pretty good system. And it's funny, which not really funny, but it is interesting how our legislators here in the United States tend to ignore all the other countries that have successfully implemented single payer systems. And by the way, I realize that uh, the UK does something that is a lot more to the left of our single payer system that we would want to implement here in the United States. Because again, you've got government run healthcare, government doctors, government hospitals. That's not what would happen under a Bernie Sanders single payer healthcare plan. It would only be government sponsored insurance. And so you'd still have, yes, there are public hospitals, but there would still be private hospitals as well, private doctors and all that. And so you guys even have a more leftward vision or version of healthcare. And so it still seems to work. And by the way, you don't see a lot of people in the UK say, oh no, we would rather have the American system. Monica G, super chat asks, what do you think of Kyle's theory that acquittal will give Trump a 10% increase in the polls? Easy. I don't really see it helping him that much. I don't think there's any way to know. First off, I love Kyle. I respect the hell out of Kyle. And I think he's an incredibly smart person and has made a lot of great predictions. I don't necessarily agree with that, like a 10%, but I don't necessarily agree on putting a number on it. Will acquittal help him in the polls? Well, certainly will make no difference to his base because they already don't care whether or not he did it. Like there's a Trump cult. They don't care. Will it help him with independence? Like you look at some of the most recent polls, there's a lot of people. I think it's upwards of like 70 to 80% that are like, yeah, we believe Trump did break that. And I can't source that poll, so maybe I shouldn't talk about that. But I'll come back and I'll research that and I'll look it up because I swear I saw it somewhere. I know. So yeah, maybe we'll just forget about that poll. But I don't necessarily agree that there's going to be a huge bump in the polls for Trump. He's still deeply unpopular, and a lot of people do, I think, see that what he did was illegal, whether he's acquitted or not. They're going to look at it as, oh, it's a political process. The Republicans defended him, and that's it. And so I don't agree with that theory. But thank you for asking that question, though, and bringing that to my attention. Maddie to you says probably would be a boost for Trump. I don't necessarily agree with that. Let's see. If the impeachment fits, you cannot acquit. That's pretty good. Dana Fairbanks says, I'm a physician at the VA hospital, and that is socialized medicine. No complaints about treatment. My patients receive there despite GOP attempts to privatize. Right. And look, Dana, you're in the system, and so you know it more than anybody else. I've heard not like the treatment's bad, but there is a backlog, and I've seen a lot of reports on backlogs and things like that. And I think that's a situation that was created by legislators by not putting enough resources into that system. And so I don't know like if that plays into some of the negative reputation when it comes to the VA. And so maybe if you could like sometime message me or talk to me about that because I'd love to get your perspective on what the issues there are with the VA and what could since you're on the ground, what you could possibly do to fix them. Okay, and by the way, thank you, Dana, for weighing in and sharing your expertise. All right, So, hey, look at that. That's it. That's all the time we got. Thank you for all the super chats. Thank you for all the questions. Thank you for the Q bounties. If you want to ask one, go to qbounty.com and sign up. There's a couple of people that are on there as well that you can ask questions. Some of you, might be fans of Tim Black, for example, who is on there along with me, and Nico House as well. So if you like him and want to ask him some questions, or me or Tim Black, great. Please do that. qbounty.com. All right, guys. Thank you. Love you guys. Have a great weekend. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. We'll see you on Monday.
Mike Pounds.
Please clap. You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.